It's April here on Jazzscapes, and as promised, we have Paul Augustin in the studio here with us, and he's going to be talking about this wonderful exhibition called Penang's Popular Music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, a celebration of the musical heritage from Penang especially, paying tribute to such greats like P. Ramlee, Ahmad Daud, Alfonso Soliano, Jimmy Boyle, Dato Ahmad American, and the Rosells, and many, many more artists from that era. It's been going on since the 1st of February, and it will end at the end of this month. So if any of you are planning a trip to Penang, don't forget to drop by to this exhibition held at the Penang State Museum and Art Gallery on Jalan Macalister. And Paul's going to be telling us some interesting stories and treasures that he uncovered while researching for this exhibition, which he did with his friend James Lockhead. So when and how did the idea for this exhibition come about, Paul?
The idea actually originated from the Penang Island Jazz Festival. In our early years of the festival, we had a competition called the Jimmy Boyle Young Talent Jazz Competition. And one of the criteria for the bands was that they had to play a compulsory song by Jimmy Boyle. So we maybe put 2 or 3 songs for them to choose. What we realized was that not many people knew who Jimmy Boyle was. So we realized that, this was quite important to the music industry. You have to look back before you can look forward. And that started the ball rolling. So what we decided to do was basically do personality profiles on certain musicians from Penang. So there was Jimmy Boyle, Joe Rosells, Ahmad Marikan, and all these people. If people didn't know Jimmy Boyle, nobody knew who Joe Rosells was or Ahmad Marikan. But after doing research and finding out, actually they were amazing. And the more we got into it, the better it became. So from there, we did personality profiles we have in our jazz gallery during the festival. And after that, the State Museum 3 years ago saw this and they said, listen, can we do an exhibition on the popular music of 40s and 50s? And popular music at that time, 40s and 50s, jazz was part of it. And when we did the launch for that, it generated a lot of interest. A lot of people were very excited and says, wow, this was really good. So early last year, the State Museum and Think City from Kazana approached us and says, can we do an extension to include the 60s? So we said yes, we had more lead time. So we spent about 8 months doing research. And it was really, really good because when you go in the 60s, you realize that it also links back to the 40s and 50s. The exhibition was not only about the musicians, the music, but also things that affected the music at the time.
The scene, yeah.
Yes, so we had to take into consideration the venues. Radio was very popular at that time because you didn't have television, you didn't have much. You had cinema, and bands used to play before the show starts in cinemas. TV only came into Penang or Northern Region in 1964. So before that, radio was very important, and venues like New World Park, Wembley Theatres, and all these places were where music was very, very strong. And so that's how we decided to do that, and we got in touch with a lot of people. We interviewed a lot of people. We went to archives, we did research, and even went overseas up to the point of Australia, England, Holland, Italy, where Penang people were actually basically also involved in music in certain areas there.
I'm definitely going to ask you more about that. In the meantime, I want to play this track that you so kindly gave us by the Jimmy Boyle Trio. It's called I Surrender Dear, and it was apparently recorded for a jazz program on Voice of America circa 1960s.
Yep. This track was actually supervised by Ahmad Marikan. I think the trio consisted of Jimmy Boyle on piano, bass player was M. Yassin, drummer was Abdul Rahman. What they do for the jazz program in Voice America is that they have 3 critics that sit and listen to songs that are submitted. One of the critics was Billy Strayhorn, but we do not have the information of them saying anything after. It would have been nice to know what they thought about the song, Maybe one day we'll be able to find that.
Interesting. Okay, let's listen to Jimmy Boyle Trio and I Surrender Dear. April here on Jazzscapes. Nice of you to join us. And we go all the way until 6 o'clock exploring the realms of jazz. And we're here with our special guest, Paul Augustin, celebrating the musical heritage of Malaysia, focusing on Penang and the talented artists that have come out from this wonderful island. We're going way back to a bygone era, all thanks to Penang's popular music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s exhibition, which is happening right now in Penang at the Penang State Museum on Jalan Macalister. Entrance is free and it's going on until the 30th of April. And Paul here is the man behind the exhibition. Together with his company, the Capricorn Connection, he's organized it with Think City and the Penang State Museum, together with his mate, James Lockhead, whose commendable efforts and research has greatly helped make this initiative such a success. What were some of the most interesting things you uncovered while doing your research and procurement for this exhibition?
There were actually many interesting nuggets. I would say nuggets because it was a treasure hunt. And I think one of them was actually a guy named Danny Thompson. And Danny Thompson was a bass player. He was based in Penang in 1961-62, part of the Royal Air Force. And he wanted to play music in Penang. He went to the clubs and all that kind of stuff. But nobody sort of wanted to let him play because he was like with the army. And he said, no, we don't let him to play. You see? And one night he went to this club and there was this guy there, decided, okay, I'll give him a chance, let him play. He went out to play bass. And the first song he played was Autumn Leaves. I didn't meet Danny Thompson, but we spoke over the phone. And he didn't know that jazz was being played in Penang. And one story that he told me, which was very interesting, was that he did some recording for Radio Malaya. And when he recorded, there was a young boy who was there who had to clean his strings and his bow. And he felt really funny about it. And he told the producer, he says, I don't want anybody to do this for me. But the radio program manager, if I'm not mistaken, was Ahmad Marikan or Zainul Alam at that time, said, if you don't let him clean your things, he doesn't have a job. So he said, okay, and then many years later after that, Danny Thompson was recording in London, and there was this Chinese guy that came up to him and says, don't you remember me? And Danny Thompson said, no, I don't. I was the guy who cleaned your bow and strings. It was E. Fuxin. Danny Thompson eventually went back to London and he played and he toured with Roy Orbison. He formed Pentangle. He was part of the founding member of Pentangle. He played with Ronnie Scott. He played with lots of great musicians and all that after that, And he is a well-known name in the industry, Danny Thompson. When I mentioned that to people I know in the jazz industry in London, Danny Thompson, they say, yeah, we know Danny Thompson, And when he spoke to me over the phone, he said, when I talk to you over the phone, I can smell Penang.
He should come back then.
I don't know what he means by that.
And you mentioned Zainal Alam, who's another one of the greats from way back when, who we're going to explore and play for our listeners. This is one from the 1950s or 60s, and it's a Malay version of It Had to Be You called Kaulah Yang Satu.
Yes, actually, you see, during the 40s, what I found out, I spoke to Ahmad Marikan about this, and he said that during the 40s, they used to play. Penang was the only place that we found out that the Japanese and the Germans actually collaborated. And they did not allow, especially the Japanese, did not allow the bands to play Western songs. So what the musicians used to do was play Western songs, but put Malay words to it.
Right.
So I think this song called Kaulah Yang Satu, actually, it's a very good example of what was being done during that period of time.
Okay, great. Let's listen to this one. Zainal Alam, Kaulah Yang Satu.
Kaulah yang satu, kaulah padaku, buat diriku rasa terharu, lagi keliru, lupakan waktu, menjadi pilu, menanggung rindu, rasa tak tentu, ingatkan kamu. Banyak kulihat, baik dan jahat, jika ku ingat dan ku riwayat, tidak gunanya. Oh, kerana kepadaku bagaimana perbuatanmu, kaulah yang satu, pikiranku sudah tentu. yang satu, kaulah padaku, buat diriku rasa terharu, lagi keliru, lupakan waktu, menjadi pilu, menanggung rindu, rasa tak tentu, ingatkan kamu, banyak kulihat, baik dan jahat. Jika ku ingat dan ku riwayat, tidak gunanya. Oh kerana kepadaku, bagaimana perbuatanmu, kaulah yang satu, pikiranku sudah tentu.
Now, you yourself have a great history behind you. You're the founder and festival director of the Penang Island Jazz Festival. Now, being Penang born and bred, I'm sure you have great fondness for the island. What is it about Penang, you think, that makes it such a great hub for music?
I'm very glad that I grew up in Penang because it had a very different scene, the music in terms of a lot of things. We were very lucky because we had the RWF base, so they had their own radio station. So, and then also you could sometimes pick up the airbase from Thailand as well. Penang was also like R&R for a lot of things, like the Vietnam War during the 60s, you know, the Americans used to come for R&R. So the influence of music, Penang was a free port. I remember growing up and, you know, we could still buy things a little bit cheaper at that time. That helped in the way that music was being thrown into Penang, you know. You could buy albums, you could buy radios, you could buy tape recorders and all that kind of stuff. I spoke to some of the guys during the course of the interviews for the research for this thing, and they mentioned, you know, things like the Americans would come and say, you got to play soul music, and they're like, what is soul music? Because we were so influenced by the British way of thinking, or the Australian way. So soul music was like, oh, this is soul. So they picked it up from there, you know, they got different things thrown into them. And then, you know, Beatles was really big, Elvis, of course, and Cliff Richard and the Shadows. Shadows influenced a lot of people, a lot of musicians at that era in the 60s, early 60s. Also because I think the way it is, you know, it's, if you look at the island, it's shaped like a tortoise. So the people move slow, you know, they're very cool and calm, and, you know, and Penang also produced a lot of Hawaiian guitar players. You know, people like Joe Rosell, who built his own Hawaiian guitar and he played Hawaiian music. Edwin Rajamani and Francis Baptist and all this plus, you know, there were a lot of Hawaiian groups. I don't know why. Maybe it was the Hawaii of the East at that time. It could have been.
Yeah. Definitely interesting to hear your stories from way back when. I mean, like someone from my generation or even younger would not really necessarily have access to all this history. And it's great that you're doing this exhibition. How has the youth feedback been?
I think in terms of the musicians, some of the younger musicians who have heard this music, and when I play them the music and says, look, this guy's playing the 60s and, you know, this was recorded in the house. They are amazed because they say, oh, they didn't have any monitors. I said, no, during the time when we were playing music, or even before that, some of them in the 40s and 50s built their own speakers. In the 60s, yeah, we had our own speakers. We could buy speakers. We did not have monitor speakers, so we could not listen to the feedback, you know. So we had to balance ourselves on stage, play it raw. You learn to listen to yourselves a lot more. And bands those days in the 60s used to play in clubs, and it was like from 9 to 1. It was in the dark. First 3 hours, usually from 9 to 12, you do not take a break.
Yeah.
See, so, and there was no book stands, no note stands, you know, and people had to memorize and play all the time. And they were like, how did you do it? You know, and so it was amazing, you know.
Actually, looking back, I guess artists and musicians these days, they have it good, right? With all the technology and everything. Yeah,
true. True. A lot of them do, you know. But we paid our dues, I think, you know, when we grew up at that time, you know, we had to learn the hard way. But it was very enjoyable. We did it for the passion. It was not because of the money or anything. It was not, you know, it was just like, hey, let's play music, man. It's fun, you know. It's really fun, you know.
I'm sure it was. We're going to preview a track now that you so nicely provided us. A Cole Porter composition sang by Colleen Reed. It's called Just One of Those Things, and she was backed by the In Jazz Quartet comprising Lee Chong-hin, the band leader on vibraphones, Jag Fadzil on bass, Austin Rajamoni on drums, and William Scully on saxophone. And this track was recorded sometime in the 80s. Let's take a listen to this one.
Just to the moon on gossamer wing. Just one of those things. If we got a bit of the end of it when we started painting the town, we'd have been aware that our love affair was too hot not to cool down. So goodbye, bye, bye, dear, and amen. Here's hoping we meet now and then. It was great fun, but it was just one of those things. Of the end of it when we started painting the town, we'd have been aware that our love affair was too hot not to cool down. So goodbye, dear, and amen. Here's hoping we meet now and then. It was great fun, but it was just one of those things. Just one of those things. Just one of those things. Just one of those things.
Hey, it's April here on Jazzscapes, and we're still with our guest here, Paul Augustin, who's the co-organizer of Penang's popular music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s exhibition at the Penang State Museum. If you're in KL and are heading to Penang anytime soon, this exhibition is definitely worth checking out. It's free and it's open from 9 to 5 at the Penang State Museum and Art Gallery on Jalan Macalister. We're just going back in time, feeling really warm and fuzzy and nostalgic about the music that was coming out of the radio, as well as TV and even in the bars. We're talking about Penang's incomparable artists from those decades. Stars like P. Ramlee, Ahmad Daud, David Ng, Alfonso Soliano, who's known as the father of Malaysian jazz. Dato' Ahmad American, Jimmy Boyle, the Rosells, Zainal Alam, and the list goes on and on. And Paul here is taking us back in time to this wonderful era and helping us understand our Malayan history even better. And he's done a lot of research with his friend James Lockhead, and the wealth of resources that they uncovered were definitely a treasure and something that's worth being appreciated by the new generation. Now, Paul, during your research, you managed to speak to some of the veterans in music, and you mentioned some of them actually passed on right after you spoke to them.
Yeah, it was a sad thing because I spoke to some of them, people like Colin Capel, Brian Jeremiah, Rudy Baum, Gilbert Joseph, Nancy Yo. They passed away after that. And I was very scared to tell anybody else when I interviewed them about this, because they said, oh, you talk to them, then they passed away. So if you talk to me, then I will pass away also.
Right.
But it was good because I managed to capture the spirit of the people during the time. I had their stories. We recorded them on audio, They were telling the stories, and whenever they speak about the time when they were playing music, because after that they went on to do other things, but during the time when they play music, you could see their eyes light up. And, it was taking them back to a place where they really enjoyed life. So it was really good.
Fond memories. We have a track here from David Ng, As Time Goes By, with David on piano and vocals. Okay.
David Ng was amazing. I saw him when he used to come back to Penang every once in a while. He loves food. He's this big Chinese jolly guy, And I walked into a club one day and I heard this guy playing the piano, and I said, wow, where did he come from, And it was David Ng, you see? And David Ng was a child prodigy in Penang. He left early in 1956, I think it was 54, 56. He went to London because he left Penang. He went to play in Singapore with Jerry Soliano's band and everything. And somebody saw him there and said, listen, you got to go to London, So he went to London. Those days, there was not many planes, so he took a ship. It was a Chusan. The name of the ship was called Chusan. And he went to London, and he actually appeared on West End. He played with a group in a club called the Celebrity Club with a band called Team So Wee. And then he was approached to do a play as a bar pianist with Laurence Olivier. And then after that, he formed a band called the Four Saints with 3 other English guys and went to Italy for a summer tour. Ended up being together for 10 years. And then during the 10-year thing, they appeared on shows with Katrina Valente. They appeared on the program which Frank Sinatra was hosting as well. And they recorded so many albums, After that, he formed his trio and he toured. He played in Japan. He was a fantastic piano player and a singer. It was just amazing,
And some of us don't realize that we have so many talented musicians and artists from Malaysia itself.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. Okay, let's listen to this track, As Time Goes By David Ng.
You must remember this. Kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. When two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings, as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, man must have his mate. That no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman each man, man must have his mate that no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always laugh good lovers as time goes by.
Hey, it's Capsule FM 88.9. Amy Winehouse there with In My Bed. And this is April on Jazzscapes, keeping your Sunday smooth and silky as we explore jazz in its many forms. And we're speaking to our special guest, Paul Augustin, who is better known as the founder and festival director of the Penang Island Jazz Festival. However, right now he's currently working on a side project. It's an exhibition of popular music of the 40s to the 60s in Penang. And if you're someone like me who's always curious about the music from our past generations, this is the perfect time to rediscover our Malaysian history, focusing on some of the major players in the music industry then, including P. Ramlee, Ahmad Daud, Dato' Ahmad Merakan, and Alfonso Soliano. Paul, you together with your partner James Lockhead had been tirelessly working on this exhibition, doing your research and uncovering a treasure trove of information, of music, and of clips of all these artists. I think it's best to hear it from you. Why should people come to this exhibition at the Penang State Museum?
Actually, we are so glad to be given the opportunity to work on this project because it gives us a chance to recognize and also acknowledge the contribution of all these people, the musicians and the people to this industry, not only in Penang but towards Malaysia, because some of them have gone on to be prominent in other fields. People like P. Ramlee, of course, Ahmad Daud, who became film actors, Ahmad Merakan, who actually helped set up about 4 TV stations, Oh Yao Jin, who became a ranger, Richard Hoon, so many of them. Penang boys who actually left and went on to do better things. And it's not only about the music of Penang, but it's also about the external factors that affected why music was being played at that time. So we took into consideration, if you look at it, the festival has 10 rooms. And one room is 40's and 50's, another one is 60's, and we got the ethnic room, we got the radio room, we got the television room. And it's like a walk down history. We have a room called the dance room as well, where, you walk in and it teaches you how to do the twist and the mashed potato.
That's nice.
Not so much my way. We have a room called Musicians on the Move, where musicians who came into Penang and played in Penang, Aneka Gronlo, Blue Diamonds, some other people, I can't remember, whatever. So many of them.
Definitely exciting stuff. So do you think the future of this exhibition would include the 70s?
You see, if you go into the room of the 60s, you have what we call a timeline. You go inside and there's like 1961, 62, 63, 64 up to 69. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, we have quotations of the relevant musicians during that period of time, what they said, how it was. At the end of the room, we have one huge wall, and it has photos of people from the 70s. And 70s was also a very, very exciting time for a lot of Penang musicians because we had Alley Cats, we had the Sweet September, the New Faces, the Brownwood. Rock was being good, so this was coming into the scene. So if you look at the end, you see all these guys with really long hair, afros.
Yeah.
The hippie era going into it, it was going the psychedelic, it was a very nice movement if you look at it, really.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see the transition of the different genres, right? Being embraced.
Yeah. If you look at it, even the clothes that affected that period of time, you see the dressing, the people change, how it affected. History is something that it's like a mirror. You look into it and you see things happen and you realize why some things happen nowadays. You look back and you realize, it was because of then. It was leading up to certain things and all that. So music was one of the main factors. I thought it was really good,
Yeah.
I think people should go, with not much expectations and just go in and have a look. And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised.
And we've got a lovely track here by Alfonso Soliano, who's been named as the father of Malaysian jazz. This is one called Gadis Idamanku, recorded by Ahmad Daud and backed by the RTM Orchestra, probably in the 1970s or 80s. This is such a rare gem. So let's listen to this one.
Berapa banyak bintang di langit, berkelip-kelipan di angkasa biru, bagai menawan di sanubari, untuk memikat hatiku yang sudah terharu. Tapi sungguh pun banyak bertabur untuk menawan dan memikat hatiku. Aku ucapkan terima kasih, sebab sudah terikat si gadis idamanku. Berapa banyak bintang di langit, berkelip-kelipan di angkasa biru, bagai menawan di sanubari, untuk memikat hatiku yang sudah terharu. Tapi sungguh pun banyak bertabur untuk menawan dan memikat hatiku. Aku ucapkan terima kasih, sebab sudah terikat si gadis idamanku.
This is April here on Jazzscapes, and especially for today, we're revisiting a lot of old jazz classics from mostly the 40s to the 60s, and it's such a wonderful time to celebrate music, especially when it's coming from our very own soil. We're talking about Penang itself, which has seen tons of great musicians and artists from there come out and be legends, including P. Ramlee, Ahmad Daud, Alfonso Soliano, and Dato' Ahmad American. We're talking about this exhibition called Penang's Popular Music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, happening at the Penang State Museum and Art Gallery along Jalan Macalister, which is currently on and will be on until the 30th of April. And we've got Paul Augustin, co-organizer of this exhibition, telling us some interesting stories about some of these forgotten legends. Paul, just imagining the work you had to do. But having said that, I'm sure you're extremely happy with the results and satisfied that all this wealth of information can finally be appreciated by the public. So what happens after this exhibition is over? What happens to all this material?
The one thing that actually has come out of this is that because we have put together the music, we've done the research on this, and amazingly enough, we have thousands of photographs. We have hundreds of recordings. We have posters from the 60s, 50s, magazines and all that kind of stuff. So now we are looking for someone or somebody who can give us a place, a sort of like a final resting place that we could put. And it's sort of like a resource center, a Penang Music Resource Center, And we would love to have that, because then that would enable us to continue doing research. Because the more we dig, the more holes appear. One thing you hit on and then it leads to other things, and we have really good fun,
Definitely endless resources.
And you'll be surprised at some of the things that have happened. It's like, wow, this guy did this, wow, this guy did that, you don't know.
And it was certainly an enriching experience for you too.
It is. It was actually, it was mixed emotions. Happiness in finding things, sadness in losing things, or when you hear certain stories, why this did not happen, or why this person's career was because of this and that, external factors. So sometimes you feel for them, and it's really talking to the people. They're talking about their lives. Some of them are still doing music for a living, and we appreciate them, and then you look at them and say, wow, you did that and you did this. And these people are just so happy being recognized. It was when we had the launch, it was really very, very funny for me, because we had so many people come, even from as far as London, Brunei, Kuala Lumpur. They came back for the launch, and whenever we see somebody, we haven't seen a long time no see, and it's like 2 years, 3 years, and these guys are talking about 30, 40 years. You know?
Coming out of the woodwork.
You say, wow, you look the same, and they don't look the same. That was my happiest moment, you know,
Yeah.
to see these people walking up to each other. They were so glad to see each other, and it was the, I think, first time that so many of them came together.
Great stuff. Now let's listen to this track, a cover of Who Can I Turn To by Fred Chia. Penang born, he's now based in Melbourne, Australia, and the song is taken from his 1993 album recorded in Melbourne called Fred Chia Sings. The musicians behind this track include Peter McCutcheon on keyboards, Roger McLaughlin on bass, Darren Ferrugia on drums, and David Hendrick on trumpet. A little bit about Fred Chia. He used to play guitar and bass and also sang with a number of bands in Penang in the 60s and 70s before moving to Australia in the 70s. Some of the bands he has played with before include the Twilights, Tyros, Equinox, and Jungle Lynx. Well, let's take a listen to this one.
Who can I turn to when nobody needs me? My heart wants to know, and so I must go where destiny leads me, with no star to guide me and no one beside me. I'll go on my way, and after the day, the darkness will hide me, and maybe tomorrow I'll find what I'm after. I'll throw all my sorrow, beg, steal, or borrow my share of laughter. With you I could learn to, with you on a new day. But who can I turn to if you turn away?
Jazzscapes, all that jazz and every kind of jazz with April Kuan every Sunday at 2 p.m. only on Capital FM.
You're listening to Jazzscapes on a Sunday with your host here, April, and I'm with my special guest, Paul Augustin, as he fills me with stories on some of our longtime legends. And this is all in conjunction with an exhibition in Penang called Penang's Popular Music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, celebrating our Malaysian musical heritage. Now, Paul, you're a veteran in the music scene, having been a musician yourself for more than 15 years before going into event management. Being embroiled in the local music industry for years now, what's your opinion on the scene these days? Now, have attitudes changed, and is there more of an acceptance, do you think, towards homegrown music?
For me, the most important thing is that we do not have a sense of our own music. You know, we borrow from the external sources, that means Americans, English, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I've always told a lot of musicians, and I said, in order for you to be different, you have to play your music. Yeah. You know, and I try to encourage people to be creative. That's why in the festival itself, we have something called the Fringe Performances. And we work together with the ministry in terms of a Creative Malaysia program. And we want people to be creative, to come up with their own styles of music. I would really love to see somebody coming up, doing something in English, playing it in a joget or asli or keroncong, but in a commercial way. How did the sitar become so famous? It was because the Beatles used it. And then eventually after that, the whole world knew what the sitar was.
Yeah.
If you go to Jamaica, people know reggae. You go to South America, it's bossa nova or samba. When they come to Malaysia, what is it? I always tell people, you can play in a club the whole night doing covers or Western songs. But if you take a simple song, whether it is Summertime or Ain't No Sunshine, and you do it in keroncong or do it in joget, what will people remember? Musicians being musicians, they always care about what their peers say. Oh, you can't do that, it's not good, that's cultural, that sounds stupid or what. But it doesn't, you know. Things happen like that. If you do start doing it, you know, I can bet you somebody will walk out and then they'll tell, you know, I saw the guy last night, he was playing Summertime, but he did it in joget, man. Wow, that was fantastic. Or keroncong, you know.
Yeah.
Because the people have to realize you have to take pride into consideration. You have to be proud of your Malaysian cultural heritage. You know, you have to take this. This is very important for us. We have such a rich cultural thing, but nobody does anything with it. I'm also glad to see that local musicians are going out and doing their own thing. You know, people organizing the open mic sessions.
Yeah, we've definitely come a long way. Well, let's take a break now to listen to more music from way back when. This is another classic and a rare one. I think most of the tracks that have been played so far haven't been heard on radio for a very long time. So it's really nice to dig them up again and play them for you today. This is a track performed by the Geer van Leeuwen Orchestra back in Holland in 1963. It's a track written by Ahmad Merican called Tanah Pusaka, one of the only two songs composed by him. And Ahmad Merican is still alive today. In fact, he's 88 years old now. Although he was born in Penang, he's currently residing in Kuala Lumpur. And according to Paul, he still drives. Besides playing the guitar in a few bands in Penang way back when, he's been instrumental in setting up TV stations such as RTM, TV3, and NTV7. Let's listen to this track. it's April on Jazzscapes, and we're wrapping up our interview with Paul Augustin. Now, besides being involved in Penang's popular music of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s exhibition, which is happening right now in Penang at the Penang State Museum and Art Gallery in Jalan Macalister, he's also known as the founder and festival director of the Penang Island Jazz Fest. Now, this year, the Penang Island Jazz Festival is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Congratulations. You've definitely come far. So, any major plans for this year, being the 10th and all?
Actually, it's amazing that we've reached number 10 to think about it. But I've got to thank the team, the guys that built the foundation. Without them, nothing would have happened, and the people who believed in us and supported us over the years. We have plans for it, but we're now in the process of actually looking at the program. It's kind of tough because we work on a limited budget. We are an independent festival. We also have what I would call positive problems, or good problems, in the sense that we have a lot of people writing it to us from all over the world. We get about an average about 300 over applications and queries,
Yeah.
Some from really, really well-known musicians in the jazz or in other genres. And, when they write to us, we just tell them, look, we can't afford you. And they say, why?
Do you want a holiday? We can.
Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, So, it's a matter of how we go about it. But we're glad in the sense that, maybe it's the timing of the festival or whatever we've done, The other problem we also have is that all, if not all, most of them, 90% of the people who have played, all want to come back. And we say, no, you cannot. We try not to repeat people in the following year, but we can do different configurations. If somebody appears in a band that has the name of the guy in the band, and then he says, next year I got a singer, can I come back and back that singer? The kind of thing. They just want to come back. They have a good time, and we have a lot of plans, but I dare not say what we want to do. If not, it doesn't come true, then how?
But I hope there'll be more cutting-edge acts. In fact, last year's Butterscotch, the beatboxer, I think that was really, a bold decision on your part to bring her down, and she was so well received. And I think a lot of people, would love to have more of this fusion kind of genres come in for your festival as well.
I think, Butterscotch was really good. Actually, I knew about her like about 4 years ago when I first saw her. And she did really well. It was something different. And I think that she has potential to go really far. And I think our festival is always known to take a cutting edge. We do things that other people don't. We looked at Europe. The scene is moving so fast. The people are, the musicians, there are really, really good musicians out there. And the Norwegians have set precedents in a lot of things. We have really good, I've seen really good Norwegian acts. German, Europeans, Over the past few years, we've also set up a selection committee. And it's actually a blind selection committee, meaning that the people that we have do not really know who are the others. And then they give us the info, and after that we sit down and we talk about it, and I say, okay, let's do this. We try not to do the same type of acts in the festival. Like if there's a mainstream act where we try to do maybe more Latin thing, and then more experimental.
Well, I think you have already a steady following of regulars that have come to expect a certain ambience and lineup from your festival. And it's always something of a learning experience when they discover new acts. And I think that's why people love the festival, because of that.
It's exactly true, because I picked this up from somebody before. I heard a festival director mention this before. I can't remember who it was, but he says that if I'm programming a festival and if you come and you know all the acts, that means I'm not doing my job. Because a festival is a place of discovery as well. We want people to come to the festival and have a good time.
Well, Paul, it was certainly great talking to you this Sunday. And I look forward to having you again in December.
Oh, my pleasure.
Definitely see you again.
When we're ready.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Thanks so much for coming down. And I'm saving the best track for last here, because this is one of my favorite tracks. When I first heard it, I was just bowled over, and I never knew this track existed. But I'm so glad you gave this to me, and I'm so glad that I was able to discover it. It's called Selamat Malam. It's performed by David Ng, who also plays piano on it. Recorded somewhere in the late 50s and 60s. Once a member of the Four Saints. They had a summer tour in Europe back in 1958, which lasted until 1966. Wow. Now, the Four Saints performed in Switzerland, Italy, Greece, Germany, Holland, Spain, Portugal, and many more countries. And they even signed a 5-year contract with EMI in Italy. David has also appeared in a number of TV shows with artists like Katharina Valente, Jane Russell, Elsa Martinelli, and even on the Frank Sinatra show in Milano in 1961 with the Four Saints. So let's listen to this one, Selamat Malam by David Ng.
Selamat malam means good night to you. Folks in Malaya say this lovely phrase. Selamat malam 'neath Malayan skies, and to their loved ones when they say good night. That old moon up above seems to know that our love, like the stars, will never cease to glow. Selamat malam, so I say to you. That's when I hold you tight as we kiss goodnight. That old moon up above seems to know that our love, like the stars, will never cease to glow. Selamat malam, so I say to you. That's when I hold you tight as we kiss goodnight. That's when I hold you tight as we kiss goodnight. Selamat malam, good night.
From election history to